Hello and welcome to this how-to video on completing your online risk assessments. By the end of this video, you should be able to use the online tool to complete your farm hygiene, water and environmental risk assessments. By now, you should be able to log on to the Bord Bia Horticulture Producer page at hort.bordbia.ie. Using your Bord Bia username and password, find the online assessments panel and access the risk assessments and pre-assessments. If not, there are a series of how-to videos which can guide you through these processes. To view these videos, you can either click on the links embedded on the risk assessment page, or you can go to the how-to videos link at the top of the page, which will bring you to the how-to video library. Once you click on a video, a pop-up will appear. You'll be able to watch the video, close it when you've finished, and return to the page that you were working on. So once you've logged in, go to the assessments page and the risk assessment panel on the left-hand side of the page, and you will see the pre-assessment and the 3 risk assessment links. Each risk assessment is laid out in the same format, but is specific to each of the risk assessment topics. For the purposes of this video, we'll focus on the hygiene risk assessment. Click on the hygiene button to access the hygiene risk assessment. The first time you click on this hygiene risk assessment, you will have to select Start New Risk Assessment. But anytime after that, once you have started your first risk assessment, you will simply click the Edit or Continue link. Once in the hygiene risk assessment, you will see that the process steps, those are the steps generally associated with the production of fresh fruit and vegetables, are listed down the left-hand side of the page. Under each process step, there are activities that are generally associated with this particular process step. So for example, here we have site selection as the process step, and the activities are site suitability assessment and growing site positioning and management. In order to expand an activity, simply click on the plus symbol alongside. Under each activity, there are a number of potential hazards listed. A hazard is anything that could cause contamination of the crop or pollution to land, water, or air if we're looking at the environmental risk assessment. And then, under each hazard, you will see listed control measures. These control measures are measures that might be taken on your farm or site to eliminate or reduce the risk of any particular hazard occurring on your farm. So in particular here, the hazard is naturally occurring elements or residues from previous activities in soil prior to planting. And a suggested control measure might be that you document the history of previous activities or land use on the site. If you need any more information on either the hazard or the control measure, simply hover over the information icons alongside each of them. This will give you a more detailed description of the hazard, or indeed a more detailed description of each of the control measures. For a full tour of the features of the risk assessment tool, you can watch the short explainer video and tour either on the risk assessment panel, or you can go to the how-to video library through the how-to videos link and find the videos here also. Let's get back to our hygiene risk assessment. So we've had a look at the process step, the activity, and under each activity, the hazards. Under each of the hazards, the control measures. Under site selection, we can see that there are 2 activities listed. That's site suitability assessment and growing site positioning and management. Again, clicking on the plus symbol will expand these activities so that we can complete them. So first of all, some activities might not be applicable to your crop or process. The tool allows you to mark whole activities as not applicable where appropriate to your particular site, process, or crop. For these, you will see a not applicable box on the right-hand side of the activity. So here's the activity listed under process step 3, that's growing. We have the activity mechanical planting or filling, and you will have the option here of making the whole activity not applicable if you feel that's appropriate. So if there is no mechanical planting or filling on your site, you might want to use this box to describe how the activity is not applicable. And then once you've given a full description of why it's not applicable to your enterprise, you simply hit confirm. That will make the whole activity not applicable, close it, and allow you to move on to the next one. Back in process step 1, that's site selection. Some hazards may automatically be marked not applicable within the risk assessment based on the information supplied in your pre-assessment. And you will see that the control measures have been pre-populated with relevant statements reflecting the information that you gave in your pre-assessment. So let's have a little look at that. So if we have a look under growing site positioning and management, and under hazard 2, livestock grazing activity or poultry production, we can see that the tool has automatically marked each of these control measures as not applicable based on the information that you would have given for 2 of the questions in the pre-assessment, which related to poultry production and livestock being on the holding or neighbouring holdings. So we can see here that the statement has been populated from your pre-assessment answer. That's neither livestock nor poultry are or were present on the holding. Okay, so now we've dealt with where you can determine if an activity is not applicable and where the tool itself determines a hazard is not applicable based on the answers you provided in your pre-assessment. So we've looked at the activities and hazards. We then need to decide whether the control measures are in place, not applicable, or whether there's something that is not currently in place on your site, but you feel that you could, and maybe that it would be appropriate to put it in place in order to reduce the risk of any particular hazard occurring. So where you feel it's not applicable, you simply hit not applicable and enter a description as to why you feel it's not applicable. If you feel it's in place, simply hit in place and put the information in the box underneath as to how it's implemented on your site. And if you feel it's not in place, but it's something that you should put in place, simply hit will put in place. You'll then be asked to put in a due date and a person responsible for completing that. When you select something as being designated will put in place, that's something that will appear automatically in your review to-do list. You can access all items, all control measures that you determine should be put in place through your review to-do list. You can update them and complete them at any stage. They'll automatically be saved into your risk assessment along with all the other control measures that are in place. It's important to note at this stage that these control measures listed here in the risk assessments in each of your risk assessments are not mandatory. Some are mapped to the compliance criteria within the standard, and those are indicated by a checklist symbol. For example, here you can see that this particular control measure maps to compliance criteria M1.2a, and you'll find that in module 1, 1.2a. So this particular control measure maps specifically to that compliance criteria within the standard. So having it in place will help you to be compliant with that particular compliance criteria. The control measures that map to the compliance criteria and additional performance criteria in the standard comprise approximately 50% of your online self-assessment checklist. So in completing this risk assessment, you will actually have the bulk of your self-assessment completed prior to audit. That's if you do your self-assessment online, of course. So it's advised that you complete your risk assessments first in order to fully benefit from this feature. Okay, once you've completed the information for each of the control measures, there's also an option for you to add a new control measure. If you feel that there's some additional control measures in place on your site that haven't been listed on the risk assessment tool, simply enter the information here in the box provided, hit add, and that will automatically be added to your list of control measures and will appear in your risk assessment report. The next thing we have to do, once we've determined whether control measures are in place, not applicable, or whether we feel they could be put in place and therefore become to-do items, we then need to look and decide whether the control measures that are in place adequately control this hazard. So in this particular instance, are the control measures that we have in place sufficient to control the hazard of naturally occurring elements or residues from previous activities in soil prior to planting? So this is more in relation to field crops. If we feel yes, they are, we hit yes. If we feel no, there's further work to do and there's a number of control measures that could be put in place and we've identified that they will be put in place, we hit no. And if we feel that it's not applicable to us because all of the answers above have been indicated as not applicable, then we simply state not applicable. Once we do that, we can hit save and next, and we'll be able to move on to the next activity. Don't worry, there's an auto-save feature on the risk assessment tool which will continuously save the information you are putting in. But it is important to hit the save and next button in order to be able to move on to the next activity, process step, or hazard. So once you have completed all the activities in each of the process steps, the section progress bar at the top will indicate that your section is completed. It will be all green, and you'll see the process step green on your risk assessment progress bar with a green tick. Once you get to the end of the risk assessment, what you want to see is each of the process steps completed in green with a little tick to show that you're completely finished. So you'll have to repeat the process that we've just gone through for each process step. So each process step on the left-hand side here. When you've completed each of the process steps, you'll see the risk assessment bar like this. And then you'll be in a position to actually print your final report. So at this stage, you should be able to access each of your risk assessments. You should be able to see the process steps on the left-hand side. Under each process step, the activity, the hazard, the control measure, and the various things you need to do with each of those in order to carry out your risk assessment. And you should be able to hit save and next in order to move between process step sections. Once you've got to the end, your risk assessment will be completed and you'll be able to access your print final report. You can come back at any time and update the risk assessment with new information. Perhaps there's a new crop, new activities occurring on site, new control measures that you wish to add, and you can do that at any stage. Simply save it and everything will update with new information.